Hello everyone, and welcome to this year's Future Energy System event. My name is McArdle and I head the Digital Energy Division in Kongsberg Digital. We are an industrial software company that supports the full-scale digital transformation of the heavy asset industry, thus enabling our customers to reimagine how they work. This year we're coming to you in a virtual event, and it's fantastic to show the power of digitalization. Over the last year and a half, we've lived through some very trying times. And now, as we see a pathway through and out of the COVID crisis, we have seen how digital has cemented itself as a tool that's allowed us to collaborate, to interact, and to stay connected during this time. So there are also other events and trends unfolding at a global level. Sustainability, for example, is very much top of mind. We have seen big and bold pledges being made by small and large organisations and world leaders strongly committing to reducing their carbon footprint and overall environmental impact. Society is expecting this green shift in order to secure our future generations. At this stage, it's inexorable. And we've seen integrated large energy companies like Equinor, Shell, BP, all pledging to strive for net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Software companies like Facebook and Microsoft have pledged to do the exact same. But how can the industry deliver on their commitments and pledges? This is the big challenge. How can we ensure that these sustainability efforts are not more than just talk? We need organizations to step up, and we need for them to do what they are promising to do now. There is one key area where meaningful progress is possible to more efficiently mitigate and manage the risk of climate change: electrification. Electrification will be key to decarbonising many sectors in the economy. But what will the role of grid companies be in the future? We see more and more DSOs and TSOs are developing solutions for various sectors in terms of replacing fossil energy with renewable energies. How will the grid allow a greater introduction of green technology into the system, which may eventually phase out older power generation methods? The energy transition is already demanding the next generation of grid infrastructure to meet the needs of a growing population with new consumption patterns. Consumption patterns that are changing because of, the rise of electrical vehicles. But there's no clear roadmap for navigating how these emerging technologies, new renewable sources being connected to the grids, ongoing changing user consumption patterns, how are they going to harmonise? As a result, there's a quite large risk that it just doesn't deliver on its promise. We need to prepare now to meet the needs of the increasing electrified society and accelerate the shift towards renewable energy. The distance between energy producers and consumers, along with how electricity is transported, has become a bottleneck to not only innovation but also progress. While the industry have made huge strides to introduce solar, wind and water as a means to generate electricity, it all comes back to the challenge to bring it together under a cohesive and modern system. Investments to upgrade and expand and modernise the systems and infrastructure will be the core backbone of this transformation. The next 5 years will see double the investment of the last 10 years. Grid operators need to be able to connect new and decentralized power generation systems and consumers to the grid, and then operate in a safe and as efficient manner as possible. So 2 questions we need to ask ourselves. First, how can we make sure we utilize the grid as we have today to its fullest extent? And 2, how do we ensure that we make the right investments at the right time? So just as electrification goes hand in hand with decarbonising the economy, digitalisation plays a central role in driving the change in an optimal way. Digitalisation is critical for handling long-term change-driven uncertainty and unlocking innovation. It will allow distribution and consumption to be monitored and managed from a central, unified location in a secure manner. We have developed Cognite, an industrial work surface where you can unify your data, people and knowledge in one easy and accessible location. So grid companies are going to move from this traditional system to more smart and complex grids, and operators are going to have to move from reactive to proactive. Digital twins, for example, can provide insights into your operations. It can run forecasts to identify grid bottlenecks. It can simulate grid scenarios and optimize grid investments. You can create and build all of your human-machine workflows in one work surface. A solution that does not dictate your processes, but allows you to reimagine the way you work. There's no more time wasting in looking for your data or finding what is happening in your operations. A digital twin can provide a deeper level of understanding and insight of your grid assets in near real time. Going digital and improving the efficiency across the existing systems it is using is very dependent on efficient system integration. We need an open information model combined with simulation capabilities in order to take care of our future needs. As new low profiles emerge, customer requests increase, and proportion of renewable resources are connected to the grid, it will result in increased complexity. Grid companies need to automate their processes to a much greater extent than they are doing today. What we can be done now by Excel and phone calls will be near impossible in a few short years. Use of artificial intelligence and advanced physics-based models will enhance the value of traditional DSO and TSO tools. With time, and as flexibility behind the meter becomes more relevant, a more modern system solution will enable the grid companies to maintain a comprehensive and complete picture of operating situation and scenarios, allowing for increased flexibility required to operate in a more smarter and greener way. Flexibility is key. By being transparent into your operations, married with advanced prediction capabilities, it will also help pinpoint opportunities to make the right investment at the right time. As society demands change and the grid industry starts to shift to meet that demand, I hope through the learnings and insights you're gaining during this event will allow you to embrace that change with confidence and inspire you. We have a fantastic event set up. There's some of the industry's best and smartest people on our session today. So I do encourage you to reach out, talk to your peers, type stuff into the platform. It's very intuitive and easy to use. All your questions will be seen and hopefully a lot of them will be answered. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the event with you.
Thank you very much, Shane. First of all, I love the tone of the presentation, because there was sort of a sense of urgency on what the grid providers and utilities need to do. And I think that it's quite important to sort of hammer that home a little bit. Two things before I ask you a couple of questions, because you're talking obviously about how electrification is obviously key for decarbonising, but also you see from this presentation there's a clear correlation between technology, innovation and sustainability. And I think that has to be one of the main points I'm also trying to put across throughout this event, because the more and more I research, the more I see technology equals decarbonisation as well. I got a bit stressed about one thing when you said how Excel and phone calls will become redundant in the next few years, and I thought, oh my God, that's awful, but it's true. So can I ask you, Shane, just sort of a couple of things, because what do you see, or what is the biggest challenge in the industry on taking the industry to the next level, and what's required as well from your side?
First of all, thanks very much for having me here today, Adam. It's really, really interesting and a very apt time, I think, to have this debate in a very open session. So I think the first speaker, Sir Jim McDonald, he talked about, now is the time to bring together, on the academic side, but also the industrial side, and then regulatory bodies, because it needs a push, it needs a change, and it's maybe I do come across as a sense of urgency, but that's there. We're being driven towards this, we're being pulled there as a society, and we need to be able to accelerate around it. But regarding some of the biggest challenges, there are a few. I mean, first of all, we're facing the most radical transformation in this industry since electricity was invented. The grids, the next generation of grids, is just demanding more and more from these systems. And as of today, it's just not, it doesn't have the capability, it doesn't have the capacity to be able to handle the demand and the load that is going to be put under. But the main dilemma we see is you need to invest into the backbone, which is the grid, the infrastructure. But you'd want to limit the costs so you don't pass them on to consumers. So this is really the dilemma that we're facing. A lot of the previous panel have discussed, or at least they touched on this. How do we offset this? What does an investment look like? How do we do investments? How do we do investments smarter? How do we facilitate the connection of this new green energy? I mean, this is also another dilemma. Grids have been very centralized assets, and now we're moving to this more decentralized, more complex way of operating systems. So you're going to have wind power, solar power, and they made, as I mentioned, been huge strides made in connecting this to the grid. But it's also very transient, has different load patterns. We see changing consumer patterns like electrical vehicles, which I know is a session later on today. All of this is going to challenge how we do things with Excel and phone calls today. And that's really what I meant. It's going to be almost impossible to do your job with just those tools. So digitalization then becomes imperative. You just have to use them. You have to have a better overview of your facility. You have to have potentially a digital representation of your grid, which is an asset. You need those tools that can automate away a lot of the mundane tasks. You need those tools that can automate away a lot of those complex tasks. So humans can only handle so much from an analysis point of view, whereas if you can augment the human's role with, AI or machine learning, this just makes it easier to do the tasks and also possible to actually do this task. As I said, it's going to be such a fundamental change as we move forward. The last piece that we really have to think about is policy and regulation alignment. We're moving fast, and it's always this, I call it this cognitive dissonance when policy meets technology. It's the same with blockchain and GDPR. That's another discussion. But here we see policies and regulations, and it's different across geo markets and regions, etc. But it is a hindrance at the moment. So we need these regulatory bodies to work with technology companies, to work with DSOs and TSOs, to actually increase the pace of what we're trying to do here. And there's a good example where at the moment here in Norway, where one of our customers are using the digital twin to actually drive and implement a change at the regulatory level, to be able to show, in order for us to do this, you need to change this. So that's also very, very important. So there's a different tiers. I think a lot of people understand what needs to be done. It's more about turning this kind of talk into action, and that's really the pace piece that I alluded to during my session.
I think you break it down really nicely as well, because there's a lot of I think it's undercomplicating the process. I think still when you present technology, innovation, data, removing data silos, it seems like such a complex process with people. They think, it's going to take, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I think when you break it down and make it simple, data, as a previous panel said, it's not a blocker. It should be something that should take companies forward. And, companies need to embrace that and actually know how to use that, know how to contextualize that. And I think that's something which needs to be probably hammered more and more, because it isn't that complicated when you get the right people in place. And it's also what you said, it's buying people into the technology, because you do have AI, machine learning, blockchain, all these wonderful technologies that enhance, a plant or facility. But, you need to get the staff to buy into that as well. And it's not a complicated process, but you need to get that, across the chain. So it's a good explanation of what you're doing as well. Just so for my benefit, what do targeted timely investments look like? Because I'm sure a lot of people would want to know that, but what do they look like, and how does digitalization support them?
I mentioned this. It's there is a huge cost associated with it. I think I mentioned that there's going to be double the amount of investment done in the next 5 years that's been done in the last 10 years. So it's immense, and it's a costly endeavor. So how can digitalization help you be more, accurate in where you invest, pinpoint those areas that are more optimal to invest into, and when? I mean, it's very, very, very evident that we have to get the most out of our grid as it exists today. And that's where we start the digitalization process. Data, I have to mention, data is so important, but data doesn't remove emissions. Data doesn't make things better. It's people. And we talk a lot about here in Kongsberg about reimagining how people work. So technology is there to support the existing people. It's there to support the industry. When it comes to target investments, I'll give you an example. There was a case here in Norway where they had kind of a regular enough occurrence of an overloaded transformer, and it was causing blackouts, etc. And they had a system in place that could already provide that overview of the grid as an asset. It was virtually represented it, and they were able to do some scenarios. They were able to run some what ifs and be able to pinpoint and identify how they could optimize the existing grid without doing this massive investment. And just note that investment that they thought they had to put in place was about $5 to $6 million. I can't remember exactly, but it was in that range. So what they did was they saw or identified a building, which was a school in this case, that could be shut down in the evening because it was unoccupied. And that actually fixed the problem, just by having that one large building completely shut down. Yeah, and they had to incentivize that school, of course, but it was much, much cheaper, significantly cheaper than doing a $5 to $6 million investment. But this is where digitalization, fundamentally, you can change how the decision process is being made. Now, eventually, the whole grid will have to be upgraded, of course, but what can we do with it as of today? And that's digitalization. And as you said in the previous panel, you said, don't let the lack of data, don't let the immaturity of your systems be a barrier. Don't use it as an excuse. There is so much you can do. Yeah. There's so much you can do today, right now. Use digitalization to identify those gaps and then keep moving forward.
Very wise words, Shane. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, obviously, for your support as always. It was a wonderful presentation, really thought-provoking, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks a lot, Shane.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.